I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Yeah. I do believe so.
We get lots of baloney, but I'm not sure about swag.
Are we supposed to be getting prizes or gifts? Because I ain't got none.
That's right. I feel cheated.
Well, honey, I don't because I get it all the time.
It's your admirer.
Well, do tell.
My admirer, I'm not sure if he's an admirer or I haven't quite made up my mind what he is yet. I think I have a stalker, online stalker is what I think.
Are you sure it's not Milo?
Well, I never gave it that consideration.
No, Milo would say something up front.
Yeah.
This is probably something about
Milo
butts.
don't bother me. Milo does not bother me. But no, I seem to have an online. I haven't decided. Like I said, I haven't decided whether he's an admirer or distractor or what. But he's always got something to say about anything I say, no matter what it is. I can say the sky's blue, and I swear to God, he'll say it's green. But anyway. It comes with the territory, I suppose. But
now we're talking about from the comments on YouTube, right? On the shows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You guys have seen it, and y'all have all had a good laugh too. So he doesn't like the way I pronounce things. I have been called on the Denisovans or the Denisovans, and I'll tell y'all something. Y'all gonna laugh about this. I actually watched a program here the other day. It was like 6 hours on every one of the European doctorates that were talking were all going Denisovans. All the Americans came out there and said Denisovans. So evidently, I'm not the only, and I always, when I say it, have a tendency to kind of put it sounds like an E-I-A-N on the end. That's just the way I talk, so what can I say? He's calling in now.
Hello. It's just all that feminine wiles you got, Forrest.
I don't know about that, sweetheart. I think some people like to pick on Texans, but we got big shoulders. We can take it. So anyway, but
can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh yeah. God. Okay, good.
Sorry, guys, that was Alan.
Milo's here.
Alan's going to join us in a few minutes. Is Milo here?
I'm trying.
Oh, there you are.
Hey, yeah, he's here.
Alan called me. He said he was just getting off at another important call, so he said give him about 3 minutes. I said just give me a text when you're ready, and we'll bring you on. We get him to talk about when he went to Annabeth's property and documented the footprints there. I think that'll be interesting.
Oh yeah.
He did a really good job. He contacted me. Actually, he called me and he said, when I go there, is it okay if I call you and have you walk me through the procedures? And I said, well, do you have a copy of my book, Bigfoot Fieldwork 101? And he said, yeah. I said, well, you can call me, certainly, but take that book along and that will take you step by step through the various things that you need to do to document everything there. And when it all came about, he didn't call. He used the book, and he did a really good job there. So it'll be nice to get him to talk about that and get his firsthand perspectives on the footprints and everything. So Milo, you got your Got your speaker working, huh? Your microphone?
My God. I don't even want to talk about it.
What's your... Oh, go ahead, man.
Oh, it's like whenever you touch something on a button and you say, "Oh, this sounds like it would work," and then you find out it doesn't. That's where I've been.
I was having trouble with the old computer. We recorded T, for those who heard the interview here this week, last week, and we recorded him for about an hour and a half. It was one of the best interviews I think I've ever done, and 90% of it didn't come out. It was just all scratchy. The last 25 minutes came out really good, but the rest of it was just, you couldn't hear anything. So I thought, and I've been having trouble with recording, so I went and bought a brand new computer. And I thought after setting it up yesterday, I'd have it all ready to go for this morning. Nope. The system I used for recording wasn't meshed up with Skype, so after about 2 hours of messing with it, I finally got it to work.
Yeah. That's how I feel about all this kind of stuff. You touch something or you think you're improving it, and then next thing you know, nothing works. So it was like that, 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
When you couldn't hear me?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was like, I could hear you guys, but it's like, what is going on? I didn't touch nothing.
Technology,
It's kind of like, I'm a moron. It's like, that's why I pay money to get my car fixed, because I'm a moron. This crap, I'm a moron.
Hey, I just like the fact that we have a comedian in the group.
A what?
A comedian.
Am I supposed to look over my shoulder and say who? Who? Oh, you guys are talking about me? Oh, you.
Okay, I'm calling Alan. Now, for those of you who don't know, Alan is a retired full colonel from the Army, and he's a historian, fully qualified. That's why Tom was trying to make a joke, for us about us calling him, because Tom called him a history enthusiast, and he got dressed down as only a colonel can do to someone. But Alan's a really sharp guy, good guy.
Well, we got sharp and dull now, right? Now. I got it.
Hey, Alan.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Mary at Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project.
Uh-oh.
Please leave a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
That's Mary Fabian, isn't it?
That's the wrong number. That's the wrong number. What in the world? Alan, let me check his. All right, let me find out here.
Do you have all your rocks in one box there?
We're you're making that swag come true.
I guess so. I'm thinking, what in the world? I had his number written down here. That must not be right. Okay, let me go find it here. Jeez,
I guess I'm going to have to define that. Do y'all know what swag means, guys?
Yes. Scientific wild ass guess.
Swag method.
Yep, scientific wild ass guess.
Yeah.
That's what Will's doing right now.
I learned that one in the Army. That doesn't make sense. Army and scientific.
Ain't nothing scientific about the Army.
Boy, I had Ellen's number all wrong here.
I worked on some awesome stuff.
Oh, hold on, guys.
We're scientific.
What's that idiot?
Hey, Ellen.
Hello.
An idiot.
Hey, Milo, hold on.
Howdy.
Hold on, guys. Ellen, how are you doing?
Did I start something here?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day in West Texas.
I was telling everyone on board here, we have Forrest and Chuck and TW and my cousin David and Milo on. I was just telling them what a great job you did at Annabeth's property on those tracks.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Did you have any insights you wanted to talk about what you saw there? And I mean, now that was that the first time you were on a good set of tracks?
Yes, it was. That's why I kept calling you.
See, he's not a moron.
I knew I was going to mess it up. I just wanted to keep my messing up to the the minimal, so that's why I kept while we were talking throughout the process, and I was filming it for you and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, they're fantastic. I don't know. I know TW knows her. He's in that area as well. So I don't know if TW's gotten over there if there's anything left or not.
You guys talked.
No, not yet.
What's that, TW?
What'd you say, TW?
No, not yet. I hadn't. I've been wanting to get over there, and I've jetted down to Comanche a couple of times to try to make contact with her, and every time I try to call her or make contact with her, she's either out of the loop or she's busy arranging flowers.
She's a busy bee. It took us several days to get it to where I could come down, but it's I'm curious if they've returned. It's been some weeks now, so and I really wanted her to see what she was going to be able to hook up with the property. Is a shared property that it's on.
I was curious. She mentioned,
and it's on a.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's a shared property. It's a shared reservoir. It's not a lake or anything. It's just a large. For TW and Forest, it's a large tank.
Yeah. We know what that means when we hear that. It's a tank.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very large one, but it's a ranching reservoir for a few families. So there's some property line issues in there and things like that she was concerned with setting up cameras without permission, and which I understood. There is a family that lives just across the tank from where these prints were, with several dogs, and those people need to be interviewed as to if anything's going on.
I know she mentioned, that one of those, or maybe more than one of those neighbors, were thinking about putting cameras up themselves.
Well, weren't they having problems with the dogs barking all the time?
Yeah, I believe so.
And acting fearful?
They've had...
I remember...
the area is right by a kill area. There's bones everywhere, hog bones and everything else. And what's interesting is there's just a small herd of Brahma Charolais mix right there. Probably about 50 beeves. And what's interesting is they have carved on that reservoir. They have carved out their own little tank that feeds in from the reservoir, so they don't have to go up and drink out of the tank, the bigger tank. And I sent you pictures of that too.
Right.
I'm sorry if I'm using, but they won't go forward to that. And it's right on the bank of the large reservoir, and they've basically done a cow-made tank. Just getting in there and moving stuff around, and it's filthy. It's terrible water. It's not fresh. It's stagnant. But that's where they drink out of. They don't go drink the fresh water from the reservoir.
Well, that tells you something right there.
I think she said that on the show, was talking about that.
Yeah, TW needs to go out there with all his law enforcement stuff and start, let me tell TW how to do his job some more.
He should be coming back on. He got dropped. You there, TW? Let's see if he's answering. I see him on there.
He may be.
Excuse me.
Let's see.
Is he working, Cuz? You might be on a call.
No, he says his call dropped. I brought him back on, so he should be. Maybe he's muted. I don't know. Oh, he says the call got dropped again. Huh. All right, let me try him again.
Maybe is he moving around?
He might be. He is a police chief in a small town there. So
yeah, he's in a rural area, very rural area.
Let me call him back here.
Of a great little town, by the way.
Is it? Oh, that's nice.
I love that town.
I looked it up on...
Is it Comanche?
No.
Yeah.
Well, he's in De Leon, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I said to
that's
you.
right. Oh, he's even closer to me than I thought. Okay.
Let's see.
I'll take De Leon. It's not bad.
Yeah, I looked it up on Google
Actually,
just to see where he was at, but
there's a
There you are.
there he is. Are you moving around?
Yeah, I'm trying to look productive.
Oh, I see. You're trying to look like you're working.
Yeah, I'm trying to make out like I'm working.
Carry a clipboard. It works for me.
Well, yeah, I can't get that.
He understands. He's a retired E8, so he knows.
As much as I tried. If I had a cup of coffee, it might fool somebody. So.
Yeah, I made Colonel just walking around carrying a clipboard.
You know, I had...
Well, anytime you see somebody with rank and lifer juice, they're busy. Don't talk to them.
I had an old first sergeant tell me one time. He says,
"Their hats on the desk, so they got to be around here."
Yep, he used to tell me to walk around with a clipboard and look like I was, you move from point A to point B with a purpose, and nobody will ever bother you. And doggone it if he wasn't right.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
If you walk around a motor pool with a clipboard in your hand, you can spend all day down there. Just
yeah, nobody's going to want to mess with you.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about...
Cooler that as a Spec 4.
Alan, you were talking about...
Well, see, I was never mechanized infantry, so I never got that option. I was always light, so...
Well, Alan, you were going to say something TW about going down there with his police gear to Annabeth's place.
Oh
yeah, I was going to bring evidence collection kit.
I took one when I was down there. Other than the footprints, I found nothing that was. I think the key thing is when they came to the edge of the reservoir, rather than cross the fence, which it looks like they were going to do. If you follow the tracks, that's what it looks like they're doing. But as Will pointed out on another show, they just take a left turn. And the ground is much harder, so there's no track line left.
See, that's something I've mentioned before. When you hear people say that the tracks just vanish, they don't. If you look around, they can make those really bizarre turns, and that was a pretty sharp turn, wasn't it, Alan?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's at a corner post. No animal, no normal animal would do that. It's obviously a sentient type of animal that would have the sense to make a turn like that, because it just, an animal just not going to think like that. A coyote, nothing else. Any other predator that's running around out there, it's just going to go over or under that fence right away.
And Forrest,
as could full grown squat easily, but they didn't. They changed direction and went into a sort of a rocky area up above the floodplain, and lost them right away.
Forrest, you saw that video that Annabeth sent where she's following the tracks, and then she even says in the video, oh, look, the tracks vanished. And when you look to the lower left, you can see the footprint going in that direction. It didn't stop or didn't disappear.
It made an immediate left.
A very sharp left.
No, it made an immediate left.
It almost came back on itself. It was so sharp. I think to our minds, we think, maybe in a different pattern, what's acceptable to us as far as, changing direction. So maybe when people see that, it's so out of their, frame of reference of things that are acceptable, in locomotion when they see footprints, that they wouldn't even consider that as, the same direction of travel, by the creature.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
that's
I always wondered.
What's that, David?
I always wondered.
Alan, I'm still being brought up to speed on this. Where Alan said the reservoir was broken, is that where the Sasquatch broke it to avoid getting closer to the reservoir to avoid people?
No, you got a where the cattle, the beeves, have gone in there and kind of cut out their own mini tank at the top.
Okay.
So
okay, I thought you were saying the Sasquatch did that to avoid the people.
No, the Sasquatch are having zero problem. They're getting all the fresh water they can get. It was the cattle that are drinking the stagnant water in this little tank. And refuse to go forward of this tank into the larger reservoir to get fresh water. I know that's a lot of moving parts. I just explained there. I sent Will a bunch of pictures on it to better describe it, and I'm sure it's hard to follow if you haven't seen it.
I'll post some of those.
That makes total sense.
I'll post some of those on the JRG page on Facebook so people can get an idea of that. Did you have a chance to look at the shellfish that she said she found? She kind of assumed that they were maybe going to the water for those.
I didn't. It had. It was that ground was saturated over there, and it would have been knee deep in mud time. So, she pointed to it. She didn't show me any though.
Okay, I can send you
but
pictures.
I know where.
I don't know if the water was lower or something the first time she went there.
There's we found whole dead fish skeletons. Not a cleaned fish. Not one with the head taken off, but whole skeletons. Now, I guess those could have just died natural causes through a drought or anything else, but they weren't that long dead. But it was just an interesting find. I can't say that related to one thing or another.
Yeah, without any direct evidence, there's hard to make a connection. But you can assume all day long. But the footprints were the big thing, though. Those were really, really excellent tracks. And I'll tell you what, we looked at those pictures in the video, and it sure looked like juvenile tracks compared to her feet. But you measured them, and they were actually adult tracks. That 14-inch, that's the same size as the Patterson.
It just didn't look that clear. A couple of them, the clearest ones, unfortunately, were hadn't been cast, and were too far gone to be cast. There was a track section to the left side of all the family ones, what we're calling juvenile or female or whatever. Mm-hmm. There was a large. And now those tracks were, fairly textbook. 5 toes, the outline of the foot, everything. The problem is that they were too weathered to have been picked up in any kind of casting.
Right. How many? But
I did take photographs of those.
How many different sets of tracks do you think were there?
I'm going to say 3 at least.
That's pretty typical for a group.
You had a big male.
Yeah.
You had a big male.
3,
what we're calling
7.
What's that, TW?
There's a male and.
I said 3 to 7. Yeah, that'd be about. Might be a young troop. Young male makes his own troop.
Yeah, it's not that we don't have sightings this far west, but when we do, they're just not that. They're not as common. At least they're not as commonly recorded. So that's what's got me curious. Is about an hour south of me, closer to TJ, is what we've got as a family unit. Are they passing through, or are they coming? I don't know.
That's a good question.
I don't know. The best thing to do is get out there and see if there's new tracks.
Exactly.
What's that area like?
It's mesquite and some mesquite, mostly oak. Very nice area. And so it's not a cow patch with just wall to wall mesquite in it. It's a visible, open type area, kind of a hill country looking area a little bit.
I think
I know that's not relating to anyone on the phone. But
there's a lot of country. I think people would think these things aren't in, but that's not true. Some of the more open looking areas, they can certainly be there.
Well, as many lakes as we have in this area, I would be surprised if we didn't have any.
Yeah,
because we got a lot of reservoirs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's no shortage of hogs. As a matter of fact, the kill site was hogs that we came across, and obviously there's not a water problem. I think people tend to think it's just sand out here, but it's well watered, very green, hogs everywhere. Just that night as the sun was going down and we were wrapping up, just my ear counted, I think, 4 different packs of coyotes.
Oh, wow. Hey,
I guess coming in to get their evening drink.
Let me clarify something. You said the kill site. Now, was that from one of the ranches, the ranchers where they would kill animals?
That is, they've definitely got that. That's where they would drag dead animals, but these were hogs.
Oh, I see.
So,
okay.
I don't know if they were killed and they just dragged them down there, which is common because there's only so much pork you can eat. Or she'd have to tell you how they got down there, but they all were in one area.
That would certainly be a draw for any kind of wildlife.
Down the feed on that.
Yeah, that would certainly be a draw. Forrest, what do you think? Oh, we didn't lose Forrest. There she is.
Well, no, I'm here. You were asking me what I think, and I had to think. Anyway, I was wondering about the kill site, but a lot of people won't eat those feral hogs. So if they are just hunters out there shooting them, they may just drag them up there and then just leave them and let the coyotes or whatever feed on them. That kind of reminds me a little bit of that site that I found up by, when I was working for the Army Corps of Engineers up there on what ended up becoming Lake Ray Roberts on that rancher's property when we came around that corner, and there was all those, bones, hundreds of bones. And that was my first thought, was that he'd been dragging cattle, when they die, just drag them up there, they're out of sight in this low depression, and there was a stand of trees in front of it, so nobody would see it, and, but he didn't even know it was there. So it's like, obviously, he hadn't been doing that. You remember me telling you about that.
Right,
so,
right. Hey,
but,
you mentioned something.
Anyway.
You mentioned something that I had to bring up since we're having a conversation. We recorded T, and he's in Alabama. Now, I recorded an interview with him almost 10 years ago on a different show. And he contacted me, a couple months ago. And we talked back and forth, and we had some talks on the phone, and he agreed to record. But a bunch of things happened to him after his encounter. One of them was, to me, particularly interesting. And TW, you may know about this, because it kind of, in a way, dovetails into some things you encountered. He was kind of a supervisor person for a company that worked with the Army Corps of Engineers. They contracted with them. And he talked about having this big, thick binder with all these forms, which is typical, of any government agency. And he said he was going over with the guy, about these different forms they had to fill out. One of them, of course, was wild and or domestic animal encounters. And then towards the end of the training, they got to this other form, and he says, "Well, didn't we go over this one?" And the guy says, "Well, no, that's a different one." And it was strange wild animal encounters. And he kind of chuckled, and he says, "Well, you mean kind of like Bigfoot?" And the guy looked at him seriously, and he says, "Yeah, that's what it means." So I just thought that was interesting that, the Army Corps of Engineers, because there's that tongue-in-cheek thing that goes around, that the Army Corps of Engineers had out years ago and had a picture of a Bigfoot with other animals. And that was tongue-in-cheek, but this was serious. And he said he actually, through the course of working for that company, had to fill out 2 of these. And a third time, they found they were reopening this park and had to build a new restroom there. So they cleared the land quite a ways around where this was. Well, his supervisor was out there and said, "Hey, there's something here you need to see." So they went out there, and there were these footprints, the classic, I don't know remember how big he said, probably 16, 17 inch long tracks that had come out of the timber, walked over to where this building was, walked around it, and then off in another direction. And he says, "No, we're not going to write that up. We're going to get rid of those tracks." So they proceeded to destroy the tracks so they wouldn't have to fill this form out, because every time they had to fill the form out, then all these people would show up with, he said, either suits and ties or polo shirts and khaki pants, and they just kind of looked out of place, and then they asked a lot of questions, and there was even the one incident with the what do you call him first? Was it a game warden or whatever the guy was? Not a warden, but he was a ranger, park ranger, and he was kind of a tough guy, and not so tough after dealing with these
Parks
people.
and Wildlife.
Yeah, not such a tough guy after dealing with those guys. Apparently, they chewed him in ways he'd never been chewed before. So, TW, you've had a little run-in with stuff like that. Is he there? He's there.
Did we lose TW?
Uh-oh, maybe he's... Better check. See if you didn't get
There
dropped.
you go.
There he is.
Hang on. I hit the button. Sorry.
Well, what do you think? I mean, that was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, that's... my run-in was with 2. Of course, I've been accused of having all balls and no brains on more than one occasion, especially when I pull them over for running code and not using sirens. Like, you really going to give us a ticket? Well, it depends on how the end of this conversation goes. So,
hey, here's a point too. Now, T said that they, on at least one occasion, they pulled their IDs out and showed them to him, and they were Department of the Interior. Sound familiar?
Yeah, they had DOI badges.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they had the same thing with him.
It's in my encounter was one guy looked like a typical field agent, federal field agent that dressed in a polo shirt and got khaki 511s on. The other one looked like a biker. And if you were to run into him on the road, you'd swear to God he was a Hell's Angel. So, really kind of unkept. Got a big old honking Mountain Man beer, and it was a really odd experience.
It was just interesting to me. I mean, a lot of the things he said made me think of you and I talking, and I thought, wow, that's so much like what you experienced.
Yeah, they're just one guy's actually trying to be your friend, and the other guy's real quiet and giving you the stink eye.
Good cop, bad cop.
And and they basically when they found out I wasn't going to back off, that's when both of them got stupid ugly, and I ended up getting 2 weeks vacation unpaid.
What do you guys all think? I mean, that was some of you were on the interview with T, so I know Forrest is getting ready to say something. I see her icon blink there.
The wheels are turning.
Well, I think we already have pretty much established that there seems to be a rule of thought next to the government, and I don't know what part of the government it is. You said that the cars came back to Homeland Security, I think, with yours, TW. But
yeah, their tags on their vehicles come back, and matter of fact, I'd sent the picture of them to Will.
Yeah, I still got that one.
Usually if it's Homeland Security, they're marked. Even the supervisor vehicles are marked. They don't. DOH doesn't have unmarked units. But they're all marked. It's either Border Patrol, Customs. I forget. There's another agency that falls under Homeland Security.
Well, they all have symbols on their doors. I've seen them around here.
Yeah, say
like Border Security.
HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, or something like that.
Yeah, they're marked. These vehicles aren't marked. They have government tags. They have cages on the windows, but they're not marked.
See, and that's what T said
and
too.
That was the odd.
The vehicles there were unmarked.
That was the odd thing. Yeah, that was the odd thing. I couldn't get past the fact that they had cages over their side glass. On the door windows, they had cages on those.
That's kind of unusual, isn't it? Even for police type vehicles.
Yeah. Well, Border Patrol uses it on the northern border of Mexico because border crossers tend to want to throw rocks, and they don't want a rock going through a side glass window and hitting one of the Border Patrol agents upside the head. But it was a Tahoe, so the side
I'm thinking
glass.
of something different.
So what?
I was thinking of a different reason for the cages, but I don't want to I'm sorry for interrupting.
No. It's for this subject matter, I would kind of understand why they didn't want. They wanted cages on their windows. They sure don't want one throwing their fist through it and yanking them out the window. But
yeah, that wouldn't be a good thing.
I was thinking about the.
Go ahead, Alan.
Pet chimp. The pet chimp that killed the owner and then attacked the friend several years ago, and ate the girl's face off and did all that kind of stuff. And the first cop that got pulled up, the chimp went right for the window. And just went right through the window. And
well, an orangutan can rip a car apart. Just imagine what these things would do to it.
Rip a door right off.
Oh, well, they'll extra vehicle, right?
Well, the accounts, though, seem to stop at glass. They rarely have them pushing through glass. If it's an open window, that's different. But you just don't. You have them pressing their face up against glass. You have them move their hand down glass. I'm talking in a car, but busting through glass. They seem. I'm talking squatches. Seem to have
they don't
hesitancy at that.
Well, I don't think they understand what it is.
As opposed to that chimp who went right through it immediately. I mean, just.
Well, but squatches have a tendency to throw rocks. So that would be. I could understand why they'd want a cage over the side windows, because if they get too close and they start chunking rocks at them, they damn sure don't want a rock going through the side glass either. So
yeah, or the first squatch that figures out that he can break the glass.
Exactly. Hey guys, guess what?
Look what we can do.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a good thing.
No cop wants to be the wind dummy on that jump.
Chuck, we haven't heard anything from you. What do you think? Uh-oh, maybe Chuck fell asleep.
Darth Vader going on there.
Let me.
Sounds like we picked up Darth Vader as a commentator.
Right.
I think it sounds like he went to sleep. It kind of sounded like snoring. Didn't you guys think so? You there, Chuck?
It did.
It's like one of those horror movies where you pick up the phone, somebody's just breathing real deep in it on the other end.
Well, I saw something the other day that somebody said, I wait for telemarketers or whoever to call, and I let them answer, and then wait a few seconds, and then whisper, "What are you wearing?" Oh.
Well, y'all have heard my voicemail. Telemarketer calls have dropped 90% with that voicemail.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh.
Well, that's kind of like my mom with Jehovah's Witnesses. When I was 13, she answered the door naked. And I was telling my dad about it, and she goes, "Oh, I seen your mom naked. They won't ever come back." And I'm like, wow, I can't believe that.
Oh, no. Well, there's lots of strange stuff. I just wanted to bring that up because I thought, that would resonate a little bit with UTW, the stuff that T had to say. And it's not the first time we've heard that kind of stuff. Joe and Walter had kind of a similar situation. Oh, and he also mentioned, now get this, in one of the parks, now these are open to the public, right? And it was wintertime, and he said, the public wasn't that heavy there, but they were out there, him and one of the other supervisors. And I don't think it was him that heard it. They related to him, I believe, about all the gunfire. And one of the guys was ex-military, and the guy said, no, that was automatic weapons fire. Now, what are they doing shooting up a park?
Well, what I want to know is, why do you go out there in Dockers and polo shirts if you're planning on hunting Bigfoot?
Well, you remember he said how out of place it looked, and I guess TW, you could probably relate to the same thing with the guy you saw.
Yeah, one looked like he was just out of place.
Yeah.
Just complete out of his element. And that was the biker one. I mean, this guy was a big burly looking bastard. I bet he was every bit 3. I'm 5'11", and I'm looking up at him. So I'm like, yeah, that's probably one that I'd have to really contemplate whether or not if I get to tangling with him, am I going to continue a fist fight or just end it quick?
Right.
Because one of us needs relief.
No, there's some interesting stuff that goes on out there. But I was mentioning about the gunfire, because that's what Joe and Walter, they actually recorded that. And it sounds like automatic gunfire off in the distance. And you're thinking, what? I mean, it's different, I guess, where they were, because it could have, anybody could be out there shooting. But where T talked about there was a series of 5 parks in there at relatively close proximity to one another. It's just, it was really out of place.
Well, you remember me telling you about that guy that I'd served with in SF that used to be a Delta operator, John Macionis. And that was, we're all sitting around campfire and we're talking about, odd things that's happened to us in the woods on training missions. And he got real quiet, and he said, you spend enough time in this, as an operator, you're going to get called out, and you'll get called out to something you just won't absolutely. And then he went into the story about how he ended up, they got called in, got briefed on a mission, and he thought it was just a straight training mission, and come find out, no, they were issuing live ammunition, and they jumped in, and this was at Mount Rainier.
Oh yeah.
So they jumped in, and remember it was the sheer volume of firepower that took that animal down.
Yeah.
And it was one guy got too close, so they thought they'd killed it, and the damn thing jumped up and ripped his arm off, trying to grab him. And then the firefight was back on again. And a good portion of Mount Rainier is national forest.
Oh, and not only that, but they surrounded the park with wilderness areas, so they can't log. They could never log right up to the boundary. So you have that extended area also.
Yeah.
We used to hike a lot of those wilderness areas. Yeah, lots of country for them there.
Yeah, I mean they can hide out real easy.
Oh yeah.
So
and the brush is so thick there anyway.
And that's and that's the wild thing about John is that John's really a no BS type of guy. And when he got quiet, he got real serious. There was about 12 of us that were looking at him, and we're listening. And a good portion of us were brand new to SF. And we're like, holy crap, you're kidding, right? He just looked at us like, no. So, and that's about where he ended it. He didn't say anything of, the animal was helicoptered out. They put it in a cargo net and had a Huey drop a line so that way they could hook up to it and take it out. But he never said what was the end disposition of that animal.
I'll relate another story too that's just like that one. Remember that we had the guy Lee. In fact, Tom mentioned it on another show that we had Lee on 2-3 times. And he's a guy that lives up north of me and had a couple of encounters. But he called me one time that a friend of his who was a contractor up there was witnessing. Now, this was during some really stormy weather up there, so the winds were high. And what this guy saw was what appeared to be a Coast Guard helicopter with a large cargo net underneath of it, airlifting 2 bodies of these things out of the area. And so, there again, it's a almost identical kind of a situation.
Well, John said that the debrief was that, you're absolutely not allowed to talk about this at that point, I think John had been in the Army for 15 years. And you got to remember, this is back in the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So, John was, it gives some context of what kind of person John was. John was one of the few guys that went back into Mogadishu after the Rangers got hit. He was the one that was collecting up the other Delta operators that got killed trying to save Durant. And they were using their heads as soccer balls. And he went and helped collect the bodies in the heads. So, John was still is, as far as I know, pretty much a bona fide, closest thing we have in real life, Rambo.
Yeah.
That was the one thing. He's like, come run 15 miles with me. And I'm like, what? I'm not running 15 miles. If I got to run 15 miles, we got an issue.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I can tell you firsthand. When I was still stationed in Germany back in '79, right before I went to the E5 board, they had people come from Bragg, and they were looking for people that wanted to go to jump school. So they had an airborne PT test set up, and I was one of the people that passed that. So they said, okay, you're going to receive orders down the road somewhere. I thought, cool. So I went to the E5 board, and then a month or so after that, I rotated back to the States. Well, while I was at Fort Lewis, I get this letter from a sergeant major, and that's when Delta Force was still pretty brand new. Nobody knew what it was, and that's what it was from. He was a sergeant major of that. And he says, well, we like what we see in your records. We want to know if you want to try out for the unit. So I wrote him back, and I said, well, what's it entail? I get this packet in, and I swear this thing's like 1.5 inches thick of all this stuff, the 40-day, what do they call it, when you're trying to qualify?
Selection.
Huh?
Selection.
Yes, for selection. So I looked a lot, and I thought, oh, hell no, I just want to go to jump school. I don't want to do all this crap. So I wrote him back, and I said, well, thanks, but no thanks, and but I thought, if anybody thinks that's easy to get into or go through, they're kidding themselves. That's all. You got to be tough as nails to get into that.
Believe it or not, it's not so much the physical fitness is a big thing. It's the being able to think outside the box.
Yeah, we trained with a lot of special forces guys. A lot of what scouts did was similar to what they did.
And that's with Delta. It's not always so much the physical prowess that'll get you in. It's being able to think through situations, through problems, and figuring out a way through it.
Well, that's why they wanted me. They wanted
80% mental and 20 physical.
They wanted a crazy cavalry man. That's what it was. I can hear Alan thinking.
My next door neighbor at Knox was the officer recruiter for SF at the Armor School, and he went twice and didn't make it. And he played for Denver, professional football for Denver. So
it's tough.
It certainly wasn't a physical issue with him because he was a monster, and for him to go back a second time and then not get in again.
That must have been kind of a blow to the ego.
Yeah, and a lot of people that go out a lot of people don't get a second chance to try out for the unit.
Yeah, he was. I'm sure he smoked it as much as you can physically. His legs were, when he got back the first time, he showed me his thighs, and they were striped. Had striations.
Wow.
Up and down them, because of the amount of distance he'd humped. But I'm sure with him it was a relationship with the box, because he was a very standard officer. He's a good officer. He's a good guy. He's a lot of fun, good neighbor. But I could see that he wasn't. The operators I knew were all different.
In the military,
the successful ones anyway.
Big.
Where you never were at Bragg?
What's that?
You weren't ever at Bragg?
No.
Mm.
Please continue to hold.
My uncle was the command sergeant major there.
I don't know what that was. Was that you, Milo?
No.
We're going to continue to hold, though.
Yes.
I would say that there are enough of us here that we're in the military. I guess Bigfoot's not something you hear about in the Army anyway. I know I've been asked many times.
You mean
what's that?
You mean they sweep it under the rug, so to speak?
Well, you just don't talk about it. I mean,
it's an enigma. It's kind of it's kind of like PTSD, more or less. If you're active, you don't want to admit to it because then it makes you look like you're a pussy.
Well, I'll tell you what. Had I not known anything about the subject, and one of my privates would have come to me and said, "Sarge, this is what I saw," I would have said, "Don't say nothing." There's certain things you just don't need a bunch of scrutiny for.
Mm-hmm.
Now
just like my husband being in the Air Force, you don't talk about UFOs either.
My squad and I, we were out, and I've talked about this, we were out one night out in the South Rainier training area, and my boss called me and he says, "Hey, there's, go ahead and, if you want to train, don't want to train, we're not going to come pick you up till first light tomorrow morning. So you guys are out there by yourselves. There's no aggressors. There's nobody out there. You guys are the only ones out in that part of the base." So I told the guys, I said, "Okay, we're gonna do some ambush training." And this was after dark, and I had been issued one of the first ANPVS-5s they had come out with at that time. That was, what was that, Milo, around 1980? And
I thought they were PS4s or whatever.
No, I had.
But back then,
I had the PVS-5s. So I put them on. I told the fire team leaders. They said, "All right, deploy your teams. I'm going to take the radio man. We're going to take a pivot point in the middle here." And I walked in the tree line, and I had them on, and they weren't great yet. I mean, they weren't dialed in. So, and especially when you go into something that's pitch black,
They weren't comfortable either.
Exactly. So I walked.
They were very uncomfortable.
They were
back then.
I walked
the
in.
fives.
Oh yeah.
They were just like a brick on your face.
Exactly.
Well,
so I walked in.
It had the harness thing, and it would slide down your face.
It did.
I'm sorry.
And you're trying to wear your headgear and everything. We weren't wearing helmets. I mean, scouts wore patrol caps. So, but anyway, we walked into the tree line. I've got this poor PFC. I'm dragging him along at arm's length. He can't see anything, and I can barely see. And what I see is mostly because it was just pitch black because we're inside this real thick section of timber, and there was bushes and stuff all around. So it wasn't like it was an open area. And I see what looks like something the size of a sheet of plywood about 10 feet in front of me make a big step from my right to my left. And I can tell you what little there was in the back of my neck was standing up. My skin went cold. And I'm backing up into this poor kid. I'm like, "Douglas, out, get out of the tree line now. Move, And I hollered for the fire team leaders to rally on me. And it was this big open area. I guess it was a road junction, an old tank trail out there. And it was moss covered and grass there. And I said, "All right, scrub training tonight. We're just going to, pick a buddy, sit back to back and go to sleep." So we sit there for about 20 minutes. And then one of the guys he says, "Hey, Sarge, I thought there was no aggressors out here." And I said, "No, there's nobody out here." And he says, "Well, I hear somebody walking around us." And then 2 or 3 other guys chimed up and said, "Yeah, there's somebody walking around us." And I'm thinking, oh, crap. And then somebody else says, "Hey, Sarge, you're from this area. What do you know about Bigfoot?" So I told them what had happened in the tree line. And I'll tell you what, I'll bet you all of them to this day would swear that that's what was around us, but not one of them would ever talk about it to anybody. And people have asked me about, the whole Mount St. Helens thing. And, Milo and I were there, when all that happened in 1980. And I knew a lot of the pilots personally, and they would have told me if they'd seen or heard anything, and there was nothing that went on. So it's just not something that was talked about.
Yeah, do you think a lot of that goes on out there sometimes?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I think so. Sure,
definitely.
But nobody's going to say anything. And if they do, you're going to be, kind of told, well, you probably shouldn't talk about that because, well, I mean, things,
right.
You know how it is, Milo, things
Right.
like promotions or whatever, your EERs and stuff like that. If you mention crazy things, you're not going to be looked on too favorably, and your career is going to kind of go in the tank.
Yeah.
You just dated yourself big time.
Well, I went in the Army in 76.
In COER, yeah.
Milo and I went in together in 76.
It's in COER now.
Oh, well, yeah, of course. I know all the terms have changed, but...
It was an ER when I.
It's still a report card.
Yeah.
It's still a report card.
And it's still the same thing. They don't do, and you don't get numbers anymore.
Oh, really?
That system is long gone.
Oh boy.
It's all bullet comments, right?
I'm not sure exactly what they're on now because that has. The OER system stayed roughly the same my entire tour. They never could get the NCOER right, though. I mean, when I came in, it was EER as it was with y'all, and it was bullet. Yeah. Weird. You had to get a total, and if you were below this number, and it was just one. You didn't do the numbers right, and there was all kinds of things, and that was the main thing a board looked at rather than the narrative, and so they got rid of the numbers, but I'm not sure where they're at now with. It's just never been right. It's like the PT test. It's never been right.
Have you noticed too? They've gone back to what
it's always getting tweaked.
They're going back to what our PT test was. Milo back in the 70s with run, dodge, and jump and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. I was shocked. I was like, wow, really? This is coming out of
I'll tell you what.
People who can't even have a yellow card in basic training now.
I hated stuff like the run, dodge, and jump, but I'll tell you what, the whole idea of that was you have to think while you're having to do endurance at the same time. And if you can't do both, you're kind of screwed. So to me, that was a good idea.
When I went through Special Forces stuff when I was attached with the 10th Special Forces Group, I was a satellite repairer, and I got attached during like Operation Flintlock and stuff like that. And it was crazy because they would make you do a dissertation on stuff like Shakespeare while you're out in the woods. I was like, how the hell? It was crazy shit.
Well, I can tell you, I had guys that never.
Yeah,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The physical fitness test is. I don't recognize. It went from y'all's era, which was the tail end of. Y'all's tail end is my beginning, where you had 5 events and, it took half a day at least.
Oh, at least.
The point was to any unit could do it without any equipment. All you needed was stopwatches, and it was be simple: push-ups, set-ups, 2-mile run.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you needed. You didn't need anything. You didn't need anything from Triple SC. You didn't need anything from MWR. You just needed stopwatches, and that was the beauty of the PT test I grew up in.
Do you know where,
as opposed to now, where you?
Do you know where the genesis of running came from? The importance on that. When I was in ROTC in college, when we went to advance camp, there was the general who was in charge of TRADOC at the time. I can't remember his name, but apparently that's what we were told. He was a Korean War vet. He was a young second lieutenant, and he was there when the Chinese invaded south across the border. And literally, he had to run like 20 miles to save his own life, and it always stuck with him. So that was kind of the push for the run.
I can see that.
Yeah, it kind of made sense.
Well, foot marches, in World War II, it was the big PT thing, and I'll maintain it's probably the best PT for you is the foot march.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But this has got to be the most boring Bigfoot episode ever recorded.
I know. We're just about out of time too. Sorry, folks.
Army vets sitting around.
Well, that's the whole idea of the campfire talk is we just kind of sit around and talk about whatever. Sometimes it's Bigfoot, sometimes it isn't, folks. So, well, anybody got any final thoughts before we wrap the session up? Forrest, how about you, Erik?
I'm curious about Bigfoot and.
What's that?
Are you starting with who? You starting?
Yeah,
we
can start with you, Alan.
I'm curious about Bigfoot in this area, south of me in particular, with these tracks that showed up in east central West Texas. TW's right. There's really quite a bit of water here. As opposed to the rainfall that we get, and you get in East Texas, the water here, it's an open plains, in its prime, more of a grizzly country. Get rid of all the mesquite and everything else. We're part of the Great Plains here, the southern tip. So I'm curious about, the Sasquatch stuff. Are people not seeing it, or is it there's so much space out here that there's, East Texas is much more compact with people and things like that, and out here we're sparser on the ground. So I'm curious what these footprints that were discovered might mean. Is it just a family unit traveling, or is it something else?
I'm particularly interested in that too. Well, and we have all the stuff going on the forest property, and it's not isolated incidents. There's plenty there, and if anybody from that region has seen anything, get in touch with us. So, Forrest, let's go to you, since we're kind of.
Well, I was going to say is I am just 75 miles south of where Annabelle's place is, and I think De Leon, where TW is only about 80 or 90 miles from me. It's north, so and I got them here. We Jessica and I came. It's been about a month ago now that we came along here at 11:15 at night, and one was right out in the middle of the farm to market road here.
A chimp.
A juvenile. So, my chimp was sitting in the middle of the road. So, and I've had plenty of, experiences here. So more than I care to remember. We always have. I've got neighbors that have said they've had kind of weird things going on, and I sent you that picture of that Bigfoot. Everybody's putting up Bigfoot, these metal cutouts,
right?
And I don't think they're just doing it for shits and grins,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that people are seeing them around here, and they're just kind of, quietly letting everybody know.
TW, what do you think?
Well, I was talking to a buddy of mine that used to be the sheriff of San Saba County, and he had some experiences there in the Cedar Breaks, and so did some of his deputies. Stuff that his deputies absolutely refused to talk about. And when he finally got them hemmed up in an office where they couldn't get away from him, got them calmed down long enough to talk to him, he said they told him some weird stuff that they couldn't even explain. So yeah, they're present. It wasn't very far. It was less than 90 miles north of from here where I had my first encounter up at Lone Star Lake. So they're here. To what depth these questions?
I was just going to say San Saba's just right down the road from me, practically.
Yeah.
Just have Tommy Lee Jones go round one up.
Yeah.
Chuck, how about you?
He don't work and play with each other.
Well, yeah, I think, for the most part, Oklahoma's a lot like Texas. Most of the population of these things are going to be over in the eastern part of the state. But I've been in areas in the western part of the state where you would never ever think they would be out there, and they are there. So I think they're all over the place.
Yeah, very true. Milo, how about you?
Well, I've been out of it for a while as far as mobility, but hopefully next week I get my transportation back going after 5 weeks of being in the garage and whatever. So I'll be out there. I got my stuff going. I've been really practiced on using my drone, see if that works. So
and I've got a guy
I'll go out and see how that.
And I've got a guy to work with you up there too, Don, who was on the show a few times.
Okay.
You guys remember Don from the Navajo Nation? He lives up near Milo now. So, David, how about you?
I'm just going to say this. If anybody out there listening is ever involved in an incident involving Sasquatch and a bunch of agencies show up and they treat you in a very unpleasant way and tell you not to do certain things, listen to them, try your best not to take it personal, and remember, they're just following orders.
Good point. Well, Alan, thanks for joining us. Everyone, thanks for stopping by. It's not always about Bigfoot. We just sit around the fire and chat. So thanks for sitting in, folks.
Listening is ever involved in an incident involving Sasquatch, and a bunch of agencies show up, and they treat you in a very unpleasant way and tell you not to do certain things, listen to them, try your best not to take it personal, and remember, they're just following orders.
Good point. Well, Alan, thanks for joining us. Everyone, thanks for stopping by. It's not always about Bigfoot. We just sit around the fire and chat. So thanks for sitting in, folks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.